My guest today is a pro wrestler, actor, model, improv comedian, licensed boat captain, and self-proclaimed goofball. I'm excited to welcome Vicky Dreamboat.
What's good? How you doing?
Thanks for coming on.
I'm stoked to be here.
I'm excited to have you. It was so weird. I was just on social media or I don't know exactly where I saw what you were doing, but I've kind of followed you a little bit as you've gone on this journey. But we met, I don't know, 3 years ago at Jesse Warren's show, Off the Top.
Yeah, I think it was off the top and socially inept.
Were you
Um,
doing wrestling stuff yet?
no, no, I wasn't. That's all still very new. I'm less than a year in terms of like formal training, and I'm about like 2 years spread out on and off. I was hurt for 4 months. I didn't wrestle for 5 months, so like cumulatively, it's still less than a year.
That's
So
wild.
I was just doing theater and then like dipping my toes into improv at that point.
Yeah, when we met, you were doing improv here in Seattle,
Yeah.
and uh, are you still doing that?
Yeah, actually. So I live in Jacksonville, Florida now, and my fiance and I own, well, he owns it and I pretend like I own it, an improv comedy club called First Coast Comedy.
Really?
But he owns, CSE Seattle, where Off the Top is now.
Hmm.
So he owns that. It's Alex Grindeland.
Oh, I didn't know
So
that.
he's the owner of Comedy Sports CSE Seattle in Fremont. And then we moved here to Florida and started our own shit. Sorry, can I swear? My
You can
bad.
do whatever you want to do. Yeah.
Yes. Um, started our own thing here. So he owns both of them still. We're actually going to be in Seattle next week for 3 weeks because it's Comedy Sports World Championships. So
Okay.
all of the CSEs, comedy sports from around the world, are going to be coming to Seattle for the championship matches. So yeah,
That's
that was a lot
wild.
of words.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, I did a club down in Arizona, Improv Mania, and I haven't been to a lot of improv stuff, but I did go to Chicago for a period of time, and I just it's so much fun when it's like good. It is. I don't think there's anything as good as live improv.
Yeah, I agree.
It's so
And
much
when it's
fun.
bad, it's really
It
bad.
is. That's kind of the
That's why
fun
we're
of it.
like, we're really picky here about who performs with us and about them taking all of our classes because it's like Alex and then Dave Bogan run stuff here and run stuff in Seattle, and then like now that I'm here, I'm kind of running parts that they don't want to do, right? But we're really picky about our cast just because it's like it is improvised, but it's also formulaic. It's like
Hmm.
when you do good crowd work, it's good crowd work because like the boxes that you're trying to check, right? Similar. I mean, it's not the same. I don't actually know anything about stand up, but that's just the assumption that I would make.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, we actually have a show. We had a show last night. We have a show tonight. So we just opened the club 3 weekends ago, and it's going gangbusters. It's going really well.
You I'm impressed. It is unbelievable how much you do. I mean, to go from improv to wrestling, I want to get into that. Before we do, though, just if anybody's watching, please hit the subscribe button, like button, notifications bell. It should be somewhere down there. We're adding that into the episodes, but doing that helps us a lot, and you won't miss any of our upcoming content if you hit the notifications bell. But so,
Ding.
there we go. Uh, how did you end up getting into wrestling?
Ooh, yeah. Okay. So um, this is also a long story, so just bear with me if you will. So 2020 happened, right? We all remember parts of that. January of 2020, or December of 2019, I was cast in Glimmer at Jet City Improv by Rebecca Schroeder. And it was basically like Glimmer was like based off of Glow. It was a narrative long form improv show that was like gorgeously as wrestling, right? So it was wrestling and improv. And Alex auditioned too, my fiance. That's actually how we met,
Wow.
was at those auditions. And then he cast me in his uh, long form thing at CSE, and then we did anyway. So Glimmer happened, and through Glimmer, there was a school called Evolve in Seattle, and they were like, "Hey, girls, come and learn wrestling." So in like February of 2020, I took one wrestling class, and I was like, "This is amazing," and then the whole world collapsed into nothingness for a while. And then our good friend Cooper, his Dean Cooper, he's a professional wrestler. He hit up Alex and I, and he hit up me and Alex, and he was like, "Hey, um, I'm buying a wrestling ring. I'm going to put it in my backyard. If you guys help me set it up, you can come and roll around whenever you want." And we were like, "Bet." So we we
Was
went
this
and kind of
during the
like,
pandemic too? Like it was just like
yeah, it was
people
during
were
the
just trying to
pandemic.
like do different things to kind of occupy themselves.
Correct.
Yeah.
And he's quite good, and he had been training for 4 years or so at that point.
Okay.
And he was kind of like in our bubble, so we both felt safe or whatever. It was just kind of like we already see him. Like, so in like late summer of 2020, he bought the wrestling ring, and I kind of started training, but not really. And we started doing SOS Pro Wrestling, which is actually now a live show in Seattle, a live promotion, but that was all on YouTube. So if you look up SOS Pro Wrestling, start at season 2. Don't start at season 1. It's really, really hard, like hard for me to watch that because I didn't know anything. And they, Pitfall Jones and Dean Cooper were like, all right, we're going to teach you these moves. Ready, action. And I was like, what? Excuse me? We're going to do what? And they were like, you're athletic enough, you'll be fine. And I was like, I don't know how to jump. I can't. So that was like my 2020 intro to wrestling. And then the beginning of 2021, Alex and I moved to Jacksonville, and I kind of stopped wrestling until like September of 2021. SOS had its first live show. And I trained like here and there on and off, maybe 4 times in 2021 up until September, had my second live match ever. And I was like, okay, I got to do this. So October of 2021, I signed up for the Nightmare Factory in Atlanta, which is like this huge, like big
I love the
training.
names, by the way. Nightmare Factory.
Yeah, I know. So if you're familiar with AEW, or actually if you're familiar with Cody Rhodes and QT Marshall, QT's faction in AEW is the Factory, and then Cody Rhodes is the Nightmare family because he's the American Nightmare because his father was Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream. So that's where the name comes from.
Okay.
So they were my coaches along with Glacier and a couple other incredible folks. And I started training there, broke my foot in December, a few days before I was supposed to make my international debut on AEW Dark. That sucked, and then got back into it in March of this year.
How did you break your foot?
I was training for that debut match. So I was one-on-one with one of my coaches. And I just like if this is my body and like this is my foot, I just landed and my entire fucking body weight went onto the side of my foot. So it's called your 5th metatarsal. And I broke this little bone, and it was called a Jones fracture. So they're like notoriously slow healing, had to have surgery, non-weight bearing, like couldn't do anything lower body exercise wise, couldn't walk. If you scroll back far enough on my social media, I had this like super dope fake prosthetic leg that you like prop your knee up on and then you walk around. So that all happened.
I remember seeing that stuff, and I didn't totally know what you were doing. Yeah. I had seen you done some wrestling, and then you were doing improv, and we knew each other, but not super well. But then I saw you had a cast, and you were still working out, and you've gotten you've gotten very strong. And so it was just all of these like combined things. Like I didn't know if you were doing competitive bodybuilding or anything like that.
No, I like to be, I don't want to get, I mean, I like to be a little leaner than I am right now, but I don't ever want to be that lean. I like being able to like do stuff. I could only bench for 4 months. So I ended up getting a lot more upper body strength than I ever thought I would. My traps are like disgusting right now.
Yeah. You've gotten like, I mean, all the AEW promo stuff. So you are yoked in those pictures. It's great.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My mom told me my stepdad was like, oh, wow, like they really edited her on those promo photos, huh? And my mom's like, no, have you not seen her? Like, just FaceTime her right now. And I was like, what's up? And he was like, hit me with the double buys. And I was like, they're here.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So anyway, that's a long story short-ish of how I started wrestling and like the journey so far.
Yeah. So you got hurt early. And then coming back from that, was the AEW, your debut, was that like the first real thing you did since the injury?
No, I had a match at SOS Pro Wrestling against Danica De La Rouge in Seattle in March, and that was my first match back. And then I had 2 matches in between, but my 6th and 7th live matches were AEW Dark. So those 2 were like and that's live is an important word because there's a lot of matches of me on SOS Pro Wrestling, but I wasn't formally trained. And I was just like doing the best that I could with what I had, which I, again, wasn't trained. So I didn't know what I was doing. So those were like 5th and 6th live matches. And then I just had my 10th and 11th matches over last weekend.
Okay.
So still crawling.
So when you say they like disorganized versus organized, like what was the difference between SOS and AEW? Like,
oh, sure. Oh, well, definitely. I wouldn't say SOS was disorganized by any means. It's just that backyard training is not the same as going to a wrestling school, right?
Okay.
And I was with four other guys who all already had wrestling experience. So it was like I sat out a lot because I didn't know what to do, or like I couldn't keep up. Back in late 2020, early 2021. The difference between like the actual promotions, SOS is an indie promotion, and AEW is like a professional, like probably the second largest pro wrestling company in the world right now.
Yeah.
Maybe after New Japan.
They're owned by
But
like
they're
the Khan family, right? Like the same as the
Tony Khan.
Jaguars. Yeah, Tony Khan,
Yep.
the son
Yep.
of Shad Khan or whatever. I
I don't
think.
remember, but yeah, something
Okay,
like that.
because he owns the Jaguars.
He does.
Okay,
He does. That's right. I got a fist bump from Tony Khan. That was pretty cool.
really?
Yeah. After my match with Robin Renegade, um, I got a fist bump.
That's
And I was
rad.
like, you love me. I'm sure if you asked him who Vicky Dreamboat is, he'd be like, I don't fucking know.
I bet he'd
I have no
remember.
idea.
I got some questions from people that like really do watch quite a bit of wrestling, and so
Ooh.
we'll talk about your meteoric rise a little bit. But back to the difference between SOS and what's the difference between like going to a school? Like, what are you learning? I've been a long time wrestling fan. I've
Yeah.
always wanted to know, like, without giving away the magic too much, what
Yes.
what are you learning?
Yeah. I have to be careful about this because I definitely don't want to, like, we call it giving away the business, and I don't want to do that too much. I have
Hmm.
some old school guys that follow me that are my mentors would be real mad if I said too much.
Yeah,
So I'll say this. Um, there is an incredible amount of technique that goes into professional wrestling. And similar to comedy, improv comedy, there's a lot of training that you have to do in order to get to a certain level, because otherwise you're not speaking the same language. So, like, learning wrestling is like learning any other sport, right? Like, you have to know the rules, you have to know this, you have to know that. But moreover, you have to become finessed in your ability to do the moves and to tell a story. Um, so it's not just about like, okay, I know how to do a Canadian destroyer, right? Like, oh, I can jump off the top rope and land and do a crossbody or whatever. It's like, where does it fit? So you're learning about the placement of everything. You're learning about how to work with your opponent, to tell a good story. And then you're also learning how to do everything safely, because one of the main points of pro wrestling, not always, but in many ways, is that you're not supposed to get hurt, right?
yeah.
Like, it's safe. And you're supposed to keep it safe, basically. That's all. I thought I had more words, but I don't.
What do you do if you get hurt?
You mean in the middle of a match?
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason you have a referee, right? The referee is for the illusion, but the referee is also because some of this shit is just like unavoidable, like landing on your foot wrong, or getting clocked in the face, or landing on your face and breaking your nose. And so the referee, you're talking to your opponent and to the referee pretty much the entire match. So
Really?
in most women's matches, you'll notice that, like, I'll demonstrate here. If the girls are like
This is a
this,
good
and like,
reason to be
it's
watching
because
on
they're
YouTube, by
talking.
the way. they're
Oh
so
yeah,
they're
sorry if you
talking
can't.
through their hair.
Yeah, if you're listening and you can't see, I just took my hair down, demonstrated what it's like to talk with a bunch of hair in front of your face. Not that exciting, but um, I did that a lot, and I still have to do that a lot because I'm new. And a lot of the more experienced girls, like, they can just say, "All right, let's do this for the finish, and then let's just call everything in the ring," which means you don't plan anything. You just, like, get in the ring, you lock up, and you figure out where you're going to go from there. The really experienced guys and gals do that, and it is
Really?
mind blowing. Yeah. Yeah.
So how important is it for the person that you're working with, like that trust between them? Because I heard an interview once with Undertaker about his first match, and he was saying he went into the ring and he kind of like he had like that old mentor type guy working with him, and the guy whispered to him like, "Hey, calm down, like relax a little," like he was getting too
Listen up.
aggressive, loosen
Yeah.
up, and he didn't. And then the guy just gave him the business. Like, has that
Yep.
happened to you at all, or have you had any issues with that?
It hasn't happened to me yet. I have done it to somebody else already. Uh, and the person that I did it to, I don't even think that they knew that it happened because they were a little oblivious. But they were this person I was wrestling, she was just maybe a little out of practice or something, and she kept on hitting me in the face, like for real. And you're supposed to hit in safe spots, you know.
Hmm.
And so I just threw her down and I smacked the shit out of her, and I was like, "Stay." Did it again, and I did it again, and then I picked her up and I was like, "We're gonna work now, okay? Like you keep nailing me, we got to be careful. Like we got to be careful. I'm excited too. Let's work." And she's like, "Sorry." I'm like, "Nope, you're good, totally fine. That's why I was stiff. Here we go." You know, and that was that's something that like old school guys and a lot of trainers will be on board with, but then kind of like the new wave is like, don't do that. That's a terrible thing to do. And I'm kind of in the middle about it because I didn't do anything that actually hurt her, right?
Hmm.
Like I would never do something that would be like a broken bone or a long-term injury, but you can get smacked pretty hard in the chest and just have like a hand-shaped bruise for a couple days and be fine. So it hasn't happened to me yet. I'm not counting it out. Hopefully it doesn't, because I'm trying to be a good worker. We'll see
Yeah.
what happens.
Well, there's so much trust between you two. Like, was it a
Yeah.
live match too? Like a big,
Yes.
like
Yes.
what level of? It wasn't on like TV, was it?
No, it was an
Okay.
indie. It was on an indie show.
Okay, because that's, I mean, if that's happening in front of that many people, there's so much adrenaline, and that's wild. How does it compare to improv for you? Because I do comedy and I know what that's like to like go up on stage and have your adrenaline spike. Like, how does this
Yeah.
compare to that?
It's weird. Improv and wrestling kind of fill the same, not like void, but like they check the same box for me, but in very different ways. Um, and I think it wasn't until maybe a month or two ago that I started getting to the point where I was having fun and comfortable with improv. I would just like hate myself after every improv show. I would just be like, I'm terrible at this. I'm garbage. And I'm still that way with wrestling too. But when it works, it really works. So I would say like
I
they're
laugh
wrestling and
because I
improv like,
know the feeling.
yeah. Well, it's like I do comedy because I hate myself. And now I hate myself because I do comedy.
Yeah,
What?
exactly.
God damn it. I can't win. But I would say like what's your question? Oh, the parallel is there for sure. And with improv too, it's just like it's a different kind of adrenaline, but it's checking the same like emotional box for me,
Hmm.
if that makes sense. I'm really like way more comfortable in front of a crowd. I've always been a better person when I'm pretending to be somebody else or like putting on a show. Like I just feel way more at ease when I'm in front of a crowd than I do in pretty much any other circumstance.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I Yeah, I heard somebody saying something similar last night on stage. Actually, I don't know if you
Oh
know
yeah.
Zoltan Cassis, but he was. I don't want to step on his material, but he had something very similar just popped in my mind. But I did watch your matches for AEW,
Yeah. Thank
and
you.
the two that I saw, it was versus Abaddon and Robin Renegade,
Yeah.
and both of them, if people are watching, like definitely check them out. They're on YouTube.
Yeah.
What was that experience like for you?
It was incredible because I was supposed to go to Dark in December, right before I broke my foot. And so it was almost 6 months in the making of trying to get there and I didn't know who I'd be wrestling, right? But just get those matches and have that happen. Um, and to get into the back and have the coaches or the people that were agenting the match, like you get a veteran who kind of tells you, here's what you should do, signed person, unsigned person, me, here's your job, right? Okay, great. So getting really good feedback from them, getting good feedback from my coaches, getting good feedback from I got a personal phone call from Coach Glacier to congratulate me and to help give me notes and get better. Like just all around, the whole experience was incredible, and the exposure is great too. I've got like 2,000 more followers than I had before either one aired. I get like 100 followers a day now, and I'm like, why are you guys following me? I'm so dumb, but it's okay. So yeah, it was incredible. All around good time.
How were your nerves in the first match versus the second one?
I was eerily calm for both. I
Really?
have not been, it is the most calm I've ever been for any wrestling match. And I think it's because I felt so prepared. And the matches are short, so I wasn't worried about forgetting anything.
Hmm.
And it was almost all things that I had done before or knew what to do. Uh, and I felt like Robin and I had wrestled each other. I had never wrestled Abaddon before, but Robin and I had trained together. We had wrestled together. We'd had 2 or 3 matches before. We had good chemistry and we trusted each other.
Yeah.
And so because of that, it was like, okay, well, I felt super at ease. I was way more nervous for my match with Marina Tucker that I had in Sanford a couple weeks ago than I was for AEW. And I told her that, and she was like, why? Or I didn't tell her, I told one of my friends that. And she was like, why were you? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. AEW was like, we got this, no problem. And then like you get in a different situation. And I get so nervous. I get like panicky almost. And then as soon as I step through the curtain, I'm absolutely fine. But AEW was like, I felt super at ease, like I belonged there. It was weird. It was
that's
uncanny.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So duration seems to be like something that matters quite a bit for you. Like, are your indie shows longer matches, and how does that differ?
The indie shows are more like, most matches you would call them more 50-50, whereas like the AEW matches are plainly squash matches for the most part, which is great because it's like I'm there to do a job and make the signed talent look good and get my name out there. And like I'm super, super grateful to have that opportunity at all, right? Mm-hmm. Indie matches, there's more to remember most of the time. You have bigger moves that you're doing, like more things to hit, a different story to tell, more time for sure. A match that I did last weekend for the championship, we had a 25-minute time limit. And I was like, we're not doing that.
Wow.
I think we went about 18. And I was surprised at that because I did not think that I would go that long. Because you imagine like cardio is cardio, like people can do steady state cardio, but this is like, for me, when I get out there, it doesn't matter what good shape I'm in. Like I'm blown up because I'm giving it 100% the entire time that it's happening.
Oh, for sure.
And you're acting, you're performing, you're improvising, you're doing these like crazy physical things, like just feats of strength, right? Even when you're laying there, like catching your breath, it's still like, okay, I have to remember the next thing that I'm doing. I have to make sure that this person's safe. Like I have to check in with the referee. I have to make sure the crowd believes me, like keep the crowd behind me. I literally have to do a push-up. Like I have to lift this bitch up on my shoulders and throw her, like whatever it is. So there's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah. Longer matches are harder for sure.
Yeah. It almost seems like boxing or like skateboarding or something where you see people go in and it's like after 3 minutes, they're cooked.
They're wrecked.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you are getting hit. It's a contact sport. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, like it's safe, but it's also, you feel it. Every time you land on your back, it's like, oh, there goes part of my spine.
How hard is it just like for the being female in that space? Like, I mean, it's so different than something from like improv. Like you're very exposed, and the business in general has, I mean, there's a lot of like sex sells, and sex is always sold in wrestling. Like, how do you feel about that?
Doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
Not at all. And this is like very anti-feminist of me or whatever. But I think it's great. I think that if I don't know if it would be like anti-feminist or whatever, but I would say like whatever women are comfortable doing, to the extent that they are comfortable doing it, they should. So like my butt's out. I worked hard for it.
Yeah.
Enjoy. Like, and I think other women are like, nope, I like to be very, very covered because I want to focus on the wrestling. And I respect the shit out of that too. I like to try to split the difference. It's like, I'm not all like, it's not all everything's hanging out all the time. There's like just enough hanging out that it's like, all right, we notice it. But sex sells and it will continue to sell. And personally, I think not taking advantage of that is silly, because you think about like even the male wrestlers, a lot of the very, very popular male wrestlers have these six packs, right? Like they're freaking jacked. They are units. Yeah. They've got perfect tan. Like they've got a flawless face. Like they wear makeup too, you know. Wrestling is a business that is very, very much appearance based.
It's entertainment. So it's an aspect of that. Does it overwhelm you at times, like where you feel like, oh, you always got to be eating right, or you always got to be like looking your best? And
yeah, it does. It definitely does. It's a good question. I think I'm really hard on myself too. So I think that if I like any picture that I see of myself where I'm not look perfectly lean and flexing, like my stomach's hanging over, like my skin is hanging over and it looks like I have more or whatever, like I get upset. I'm like, I better. And then I have to stop and be like, no, I'm a fucking athlete. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's definitely hard. Like it weighs on me. And people on social media are assholes too. Like if somebody slides in my DMs and I don't give them the answer that I want, like I get called all sorts of names. So that's definitely a part of it too. Like that part I think is more overwhelming because it's just like, stop messaging me. If you want to talk to me, pay for it. Like I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
That's more overwhelming than the expectation because I expect a lot from myself. And so like I'm only ever disappointing myself. I haven't so far, from what I've heard from anybody, disappointed any coaches or any promoters or anything like that.
It's funny. I heard something the other day. Cara Rossellini, she's a comic from Seattle, and she has like 3 daughters, I think, or maybe 2, but at least one of them plays competitive soccer. And one of the coaches for the team had like both boys and girls that were athletes for kids. And he said that like boys play their best when they feel their best.
Yeah.
And girls like need to look like feel like they're looking their best in order to play their best. Like it's important to them. Like,
yeah.
And that's a wild generality. It's a one person,
No,
but I
sure.
thought that was because I never thought about, appearance when I was playing sports ever, but
yeah, you wouldn't.
Yeah. And
that makes total sense. And I think wrestling is probably the exception to that rule because everybody knows like you have to look a certain way, male or female. But that makes a lot of sense. I think women are generally like way more self-conscious than men.
Is there pressure to use any additional substances? Like
like PEDs?
Mm-hmm.
No. There are women that do it, and there are men that do it. I would say a lot of men that do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been like offered to go down that path, and it's not interesting to me.
Yeah.
I like being a natural athlete, but I don't judge people who do what they want to do, like using whatever they want to use. But I wouldn't say that there's pressure. I would say for me, like I don't wear makeup on my face at all. If I'm wearing makeup, it's eye makeup. Mm-hmm. There is not a single time, I don't think, in any promo picture or any match that I've had makeup on my face. And that to a lot of girls is like, what's wrong with you? Like, why aren't you doing that? And I'm like, because I don't want to. Like, this is my face. I'll wear eye makeup because it's fun and it's the only thing I know how to put on. I don't own concealer. Like, I don't know how to powder I just don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
That pressure is very, very real. The makeup pressure. And people are like, well, how did you do your makeup so fast? And I'm like, because I don't wear any. Like, I just don't care. I'm not putting on fake eyelashes. Like I did for dark. My friends actually put them on for me because I didn't know how.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, like that's way more in the like women's wrestling circle. It's more about like your makeup and your hair and your gear and your boots and your tights and all of that. And then for the men, I think it's probably more like your PEDs, brother.
Oh, for sure. Where did Vicky Dreamboat stem from?
Do you know Ricky Steamboat?
I don't.
Ricky the Dragon Steamboat you should look him up, man. If you like wrestling, he is like la creme de la creme. He is incredible. And then I'm a I'm a boat captain. That was my job for many years.
That.
I still do it from time to time. Yeah. So I'm Vicky the Captain Dreamboat, which is a play on Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was he somebody you saw growing up, or like were you a wrestling fan growing up?
I wasn't. I didn't start watching wrestling until 3 years ago.
Okay.
So I'm like super mega brand new. Everybody's like, oh yeah, you watch wrestling when you're a kid and then you decided to be a wrestler. And I'm like, nah, bro. I was dating a guy and he was like, hey, look at this match. And it was Undertaker versus Mankind. Hell in a Cell was the first wrestling match I ever saw.
That's my favorite match.
That's my favorite match too.
Yeah.
I was like, I fucking love this. I got to see more.
I saw it like live as a kid with my brothers on pay-per-view. And
you did?
Yeah, it was such a different culture then. Like I remember bedtime was like 10 o'clock for us. And we would have to like, there was something with WWE where it would never cut off right at 10. There was always like a 5-minute buffer or something that bled into the next thing. And I think it was just so hard to time things out with live entertainment like that.
Yeah.
And we would have to, I think my bedtime was 9, my brother's was 10. So we'd have to tape this on VHS. We'd always miss like the last hour where there was big matches and shit. So we'd wake up early the next day to watch it, but the timer would cut off that last 5 minutes.
So you'd miss it.
But then the story arc, all of that for WWE was like Monday nights and Thursday nights were just, everything was just building to these pay-per-view events. Mm-hmm. And then once a month you'd have a pay-per-view in the the Mankind Undertaker pay-per-view was insane. I mean, it was, I've been to the live WWE events. I went to SummerSlam where Jesse Ventura like actually came back and wrestled when he was the governor of Minnesota.
You did?
Yeah. My dad
Dude.
and my brothers, we all went. He came back as Jesse the Body, but
yeah, damn.
It was such a crazy culture. Like I've had a couple of people on here talking about like wrestling culture, and I mean, there are people that are still super into it as adults. And what is it like interacting with like the super fans?
Oh gosh, I wish I could answer that better, but I don't really interact with the super fans as much, because I'm most of the crowd that I'm in front of are like indie wrestling fans who like wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I went to MomoCon for Stranglehold Championship Wrestling last weekend,
Yeah.
and that was the most like super fan interaction I've had. Because I had two people show up who DM'd me on Instagram, and they were like, "Are you going to be there?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's why it's on my post." And they were like, "Okay, we're going to come to your table," and I was like, "All right, cool, let's see what happens." And they did, and they like bought shirts and they took pictures with me. And then when I won the championship, they wanted to take that picture and like posted their pictures and stuff. And that was like the closest to super fan that I had. But when people, that's why, so I don't mind saying this, before we started recording, you were like, "Oh, you want to talk about this and that?" And I was like, "Please don't do wrestling trivia with me."
Yeah.
Because super fans like want to talk about that. They're like, in 1996, when this wrestler did that on on not even on a pay-per-view, on Monday Night Raw, what did you think of that? And I'm like, I have no idea.
No idea. Well, it's like a big soap opera too. Like you can't, if you're not following every week, you're completely out of the loop. Like you can't really just like get like tune in and tune out of wrestling. You're either all the way in or not at all.
Right. And now, I mean, it's a little bit different because you can watch isolated matches. And that's what I do is I watch a lot of Attitude Era. Like I don't watch it year by year. I go and I watch the matches that I want to watch, or I watch whatever storyline or compilation thing. But for people who are like hardcore wrestling fans and have been for longer than I've been alive, they are always like, I don't even know about like disappointed, but just surprised when it's like, I'm sorry, I don't have the last 35 years of wrestling memorized. I wish I did.
Yeah.
Maybe someday, but I don't know it. Sorry.
Yeah, you just happen to be good at this thing and you enjoy doing it.
I'm getting there, yeah. I definitely enjoy it.
How are I mean, you said you look back at promos and stuff, like you weren't doing intros for AEW, and I didn't see any like actual like off ring promos. Like, is that something that you're building up to?
I will toot my own horn on this. I'm very good at promos. I cut a good promo.
Hell yeah.
I think I'm better at cutting promos than I am at wrestling, because it's just so natural to me, like acting, and it's improv, right? It's like solo prov, just going off the cuff. But there's a couple of promos out there. I cut a promo last weekend during the show. I cut a promo for Continental Championship Wrestling here in Jacksonville. That's on YouTube. I cut a promo for Pro Wrestling Action. I got to cut another one. Ugh, better not forget that. Yikes. But there's not as many opportunities to do that. And they're not, for the indies, like it's not cut in the same way that like actual AEW TV or WWE is.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, all right, get the mic and talk about what you're going to do now for the next, you have 1 minute. Okay, shit, I got 1 minute. Here we go. But there will be more. There's more coming. I just, like I said, like I've only had 11 live matches. So there haven't been like a ton of opportunities for me to do that.
What's kind of the long-term goal though? Like what's success for you with this?
I don't know yet. A big part of me is like a contract. I want to get signed, right? And I would take Impact. I would take WWE. I would take AEW. I would take anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
NXT, anything. I also am pretty happy learning where I am right now. And I don't want to get an opportunity that I'm not ready for and then screw it up. You know what I mean? So I think that I will get back to you on that, because I just don't know what the right answer is. Like,
I think that is the right answer though, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Like, because you want to be ready when you get that opportunity.
Yeah, I do. And I'm sorry.
No, I have to imagine like there's probably people that have more experience, but like there's a combination of factors that need to happen. and you obviously have something that they're interested in, right? I mean, they're booking you to do these shows, so
Thank you. Yeah, I think so. I got a lot of good feedback last weekend from people who have been in the business for 20 years, 30 years, and they're like, you have it, you have the it factor. And I'm like, I don't know what that is, but if you say it, I will accept. But then I've also gotten feedback from people who are like, you suck. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I know I'm new. I do suck. That's fine.
yeah.
I'm really good at some stuff and I'm really bad at other stuff. Like that's how wrestling goes. And so I think that's part of it is just like I don't I really don't have any ego when it comes to wrestling right now because it's just I'm just frankly like really stoked to continue to learn. Um, so my ego doesn't get bruised when people are like, you're not good enough to be there, or when they're like, you're so good. I'm like, I'm just gonna hear you, I'm gonna receive it, and I'm gonna say thank you either way, and then I'm gonna let it roll off my back because I know where I'm at and I know what I need to do, and I'm gonna focus on that.
Yeah. I don't know if this is helpful at all, but when I started doing stand up, like I had a lot of that feedback, and I realized at some point like it's almost like being an athlete, like a basketball player or something, that like you're really tall. Like you may have these natural abilities for this thing, but you don't really know how to play the game. And so there are going to be people that come that if like you're on the court and they're not, and be like, you fucking suck. Like you're just tall.
Right,
And
right,
like why you get on the court, you don't have any control over, but what you do
right.
with the time with the ball, you do. So like,
Yeah,
fuck them. Like you can't, uh, like you can't feel guilty for like natural gifts that you have, and you
thank
shouldn't,
you.
but
That's
you
a really good way of
can,
putting it. I hadn't. Oh, sorry.
well, you can like just like use the like just don't waste the opportunity. Like if you're getting that spot instead of that person, keep working, and eventually just they'll shut the fuck up.
Yeah, man, I hope that's right. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. That I never thought of it that way. You're definitely right about that. You're definitely right about that.
And people just, I don't know, anytime there's a new change, like that was one of my listener questions. Um, a special listener, his name's Nick. I don't want to,
Nick,
he's a local guy, big supporter of comedy around here. But
cool.
have you been getting like a decent number of the wrestlers in the area kind of bitter towards you for like the opportunities you've been getting and how fast you've been rising?
Not to my face. I mean, I've heard stuff. I will say I'm fortunate to have more friends in wrestling than not. And I have friends that are higher up, like friends that are very well connected, friends that have been in the business for a long time, friends that haven't, but that are well liked and well respected. And so stuff gets back to me. Um, but that's another thing that I just let roll off my back because people are uh, either jealous or they don't think that I've deserved it. They don't think that I've earned it. They don't think that I worked hard. And that's all bullshit. Like, and I don't take any opportunity for granted, but I worked my ass off for everything I've gotten. Nothing just was handed to me. And I think people are like, oh, you're just a pretty face and you show off your body and that's why you're wrestling. And it's like, okay, well, come and wrestle me then, dude, because I can also do things. Like it's not just that. I mean, that's part of it.
Yeah.
But I also worked very hard for my body. Like it's not a thing that just happened. Like I didn't just wake up one day and become muscular and athletic and able to do things. That took years to even get like half of the athletic, which is what I think I am now. So it gets back to me, but nobody said it to my face yet. Knock on
I
wood.
love that you said that. There is almost like this like shaming culture of people that are in shape that's like
Right.
acceptable, where they're like, hey, you think you just because you're in good shape, and you're like, well, wait, what, you're giving me shit for like working on myself? Like that's a very strange, like you wouldn't do that for somebody in therapy, right? Like you think you're
Right.
fucking cool because you're taking care of your emotional problems.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I like to say I worked my ass on.
Yeah, there you go.
Didn't have an ass before.
That's so fun. And yeah, that's one thing that like I've always said that actually, where it's like you can't fake that. That like
Yeah.
you got to work for one
There's
of those.
yeah,
Um,
man. It's all tough.
I got a couple more questions for you.
I'm ready.
Um, what do you say when people say professional wrestling isn't real?
Mm. Um, that particular sentence I'm okay with as long as they don't say that it's fake.
Okay.
The word fake really pisses me off. Like I don't know if you can see, probably not, but I have a bruise on my nose and a bruise right here and a scratch mark here from my match last weekend. That shit ain't fake.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not fake. Um, I generally try to urge people, like I'm not trying to language police anybody, but I would urge people to say something to the effect of like it is predetermined, right? It is planned, it is choreographed, right? Like those things I'm like, all right, sports entertainment, I get it, like you're right, fine. But I think that it really delegitimizes wrestling as a sport, and as a career, when people are like, yeah, it's all bullshit anyway, anybody can do it. It's like, oh man, no, that's not true at all. Not anybody can do it. It's kind of like how people think like, I'm funny, I can do stand up. All right, make a career out of it.
For sure.
I'd like to, so I get a little like salty about it. But mostly I think people are well intentioned, and it's just like they're trying to make sense of the whole thing because they're like, you're not hurt for real, right? And it's like, nah, man, let's chat.
For sure.
So I understand like both sides of that, I guess.
It's funny. It just made me think of something. When I was 10 years old, I went to the like state championship wrestling match for Minnesota. And it was
as a wrestler?
No, I as a spectator. My dad wrestled in college, and then one of our family friends did the same at the University of Minnesota. And it was when Brock Lesnar was wrestling for the state championship, like as a American or
like
whatever,
Greco-Roman, amateur.
Yeah. And around that same time, we went to SummerSlam, and I just bring it up because like it was a small, semi-filled gym for the best wrestlers in the state of Minnesota, and like I have friends that are like that style of wrestling that did it in high school. I have a lot of respect for it. My dad did it throughout college and shit. But like there's clearly some market for the sports entertainment side of wrestling because I've been to stadiums full of people. Like it's almost like something like that on no pun intended, like on steroids. Like there's a version of this when it's hyped up, almost like Supercross or something, where like people just like to see the limits that things can be taken.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I've never been to an amateur wrestling show, match, whatever. But it's kind of like that makes me think of what we were talking about earlier, which is like sex sells. It's like, well, don't fucking be mad at me for being marketable. Like, don't be mad at anybody for being marketable, right? And there's a market for both things, but professional wrestling is, in my opinion, my very biased opinion, just more interesting to watch. Especially because like the stakes are, everybody knows in their minds the stakes are a little bit lower, but the wrestlers make the stakes as high as possible because of their ability to portray character and storytelling, right? So I think that's an interesting observation. I would love to go and see like a high school wrestling. I think maybe I've seen one, but not it wasn't notable enough for me to actually remember if that's true or if I just made it up.
Yeah, it's very different. Like it's way different. I mean, wrestling almost feels like monster trucks to me, like with like pro wrestling, and it's not something I could go to like every week, but I could definitely, if somebody said, hey, I'm going to this, I would definitely go. Like if you have an event here in Seattle, I for sure will go, and like anybody listening, definitely please go. But I did want to ask, like before we wrap up,
for sure,
could you do a promo for us for this episode, and then we can clip it? So just like
you want me to do it right now?
Does that work?
Yeah. What do you want? What are the beats? Like what are the things that you want me to hit?
Just that you're gonna be on the podcast, like coming to the Fathom and Friends podcast. Any like wrestling fans or fans of storytelling, come by and I don't maybe throw the guns up a little bit too.
Oh God, I gotta get some pump. I don't have any pump right now.
Yeah, you need to get some bands quick.
God, what do you know the date that's gonna be released yet?
Let me see.
Cool, I'll do push-ups while you do that. You can
let me check really quick. So July 11th, we're a couple weeks ahead, so
Excellent.
we'll have plenty of time for build up.
Let me not be like a sweaty, gross mess. Okay. And ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, probably not children. There's a lot of bad words in this episode. We got Vicky, the Captain Dreamboat, here on the Fathom and Friends podcast on July 11th. Y'all got to tune in because we're talking wrestling. We're talking comedy. We're talking improv comedy. Specifically, we're talking about my life. We're talking about his life. It's a lot of life talk. It's a great time. Also, there's muscles. That's all I got.
Perfect. Thank you.
Will that work?
Yeah, definitely. For anybody listening and watching too, like where can they follow your stuff? Where can I know you got like a couple different social media things, and then if you have a Patreon or anything like that you're looking to plug?
Yes, thank you. So you can follow me on Twitter. My handle is Vicky Dreamboat on everything. So Vicky Dreamboat on Twitter, Vicky Dreamboat on Instagram. Please follow my Facebook page. There's so many people that are like, why don't you have more people on Facebook? And I'm like, I don't know, I don't use it. But if you follow me on Facebook, I'll use it. TikTok, I'm really bad at it, but I watch a lot of them. So shoot me a message on there. And then my Patreon is patreon.com/Vicky Dreamboat. You can get exclusive wrestling content. I post all of my matches there before they go live. Most of my Instagram posts, and then some stuff that I don't put on Instagram ends up on Patreon.
Hell yeah.
That's all I got.
Thank you for coming on. Anybody watching on YouTube, just make sure to hit that subscribe button, like button, share this episode, and if you're just listening, rate and review us, and make sure to follow us on Instagram at FNFpod. We're going to leave you with Jaga.
I just make the waves, I don't write them. I can hear the lyrics in my spirit as I write them. Why you wanna walk and talk just like them? I can't get caught up in all the hype and the excitement. I just make the waves, I don't write them. I can hear the lyrics in my spirit as I write them. Why you wanna walk and talk just like them? I can't get caught up in all the hype and the excitement. Welcome to my wave pool, my wave pool. 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 Welcome to my wave pool.